Since the convention was passed in 2003, there's been a lot of discussion in the international museum community about the role museums can play in safeguarding ICH. And a lot of it has focused on, well, how can museums supplement or add on to what they already do, those core museum activities that I'll talk about next. Collection, documentation, research. Now we just have to add on ICH. I think that's not the right approach. That's not the way to that we just add it on, but how do we integrate ICH into museum activities and functions? How do we make it a fundamental part of everything we do, not just one more thing? So that's what I hope to talk about, of what are some of the tools, what are some of the approaches we can use to do that. But the ICH movement, or trend, is part of other trends that have been going on in the museum world for 20 years or more. And that has been a trend to shift the focus away from objects and collections, material culture, to people and visitors, and the stories, the values of the communities we serve. And also with, you've already seen this definition, Alex had it up yesterday, the definition of ICOM. This is the 2007. Museum definitions are rewritten every 10, 20 years because the museum is fundamentally a social institution. So as societies change and the way we think about our institutions change and the purposes they should serve, so do our definitions of those institutions change. The line in here that a museum is a nonprofit permanent institution in service of society, that didn't appear in the definition of a museum until the 1970s. That it shifted away from the primary purpose of a museum being to collect and store and keep and preserve things, to now being about society, people. That's its primary purpose, to serve people and society. And then also, just in 2007, I'm sure as an influence from the convention, it used to say communicates and exhibits the material evidence. Material evidence, again, focus on material culture. Now it includes intangible cultural heritage. So I just wanted to bring that up again to show you how our definitions of institutions change as we change our thinking and values about them. So, other developments, which has been one of the primary focuses of my research, has been greater recognition of non-Western or alternative models of museums, ways of taking care of or curating collections, objects, people's culture, and concepts of cultural heritage preservation. So now we have a field that we can call comparative museology, that we have been collecting now for 10, 20 years, examples or case studies from around the world about how people create spaces and develop methods for taking care of things that they value. And this is a fairly recent development because for a long time, and still, in my opinion, museology is dominated by Western museology. Very Eurocentric in terms of how we define what a museum is, what museums should be about, how we curate things, is built on a Western scientific approach to, until recently, material culture. And so Now we're beginning to see, well, wait a minute. People all over the world since ancient times have created places or spaces where they can keep things that they value. Their structures, and they have created methods for taking care of things. Just like we have in professional museology, conservation methods for preserving things for the future. We now know that many cultures around the world have also conservation measures. So this is all part of what I call indigenous curation, as well as these concepts about cultural heritage preservation. And I'll give you examples of all of this. And where can we find these? How do we identify them? One of the things that I have in what I'm saying today, you can read about in the readings in your packets, in the pieces that I have written. I talk about, well, okay, if we are thinking about indigenous curation not only as an alternative way to look at museums and curation, but also as a method for safeguarding, so that indigenous curation becomes both a form of intangible cultural heritage as well as a way of protecting intangible cultural heritage. And I know that probably doesn't make sense right now, but with examples, I will try to explain it. So we have to try to identify it or look for it, because those of us who have been trained in Western museology, we can't see or recognize when maybe there is an example of indigenous museology in front of us. We have to open our eyes to see if it's in vernacular or traditional architecture, if it's in religious beliefs and practices and ceremonies, or in kinship systems and ancestor worship. Where can we find these ways that people have traditionally saved and preserved things that they find valuable to them and transmitted or passed on that knowledge to future generations?